was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I played around there until 1958. I left Little Rock in '58 with a steel player, Leroy Brannon. We took a job in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was 17 years old at the time. We took a 6-night-a-week club gig in Santa Fe, and I ended up staying there for around 4 years, but it was Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Denver, Flagstaff, around the Southwest, different gigs. And when I was 21, I said, well, it's time to go to LA. So I basically packed up, headed west, landed in LA, and the only person I knew out there was Glenn Campbell, because he had been playing in a band up the street from me in Albuquerque. He was at the hitching post, and I was down at the Chesterfield, and we became friends during that time. So actually, when Glenn left and went out to LA, his drummer joined my band. So the two of us went out to LA together and stayed with Glenn for a few days till we got our bearing and found a place to stay and all of that. Glenn took me around, and he took me to a Ricky Nelson session, and I got to meet James Burton and Joe Osborne. That was the first time I met those guys. And so I had to take a road gig when I first got to LA, because you don't just go out there and go straight into the studio. You somehow got to work your way in over a period of time. And I took a club gig with Seals Crofts, although they weren't Seals Crofts at that time. They had just gotten out of the band called the Champs, and they needed a guitar player, so I joined them, and we played in the clubs around LA for about a year. And then we got booked into Las Vegas, and we actually played in Vegas for about 2 years. And during that time, I was coming back and forth to LA and doing sessions with Boyce and Hart. And when they finally got the job to write for the Monkees TV show, they showed up one night in the casino and said, we really got this great deal for a TV show, and we want you to come play guitar with us. So I pretty much packed up and left Las Vegas and went to LA. We did that, and by that time, by the time Last Train to Clarksville became a #1 hit, that was my foot in the door for sessions in LA. And at that time, I was in. I just stayed there, and that was all I did for the next, I don't know how many years, till I started producing, and then I phased out of session work.
But what was the first? Was it Seals and Crofts?
The first production I did was for England Dan and John Ford Coley. They had been out in LA shopping for a record deal, and they were about ready to go back to Texas. And I said, well, I'm working with Herb Alpert tomorrow. I will take your tape and play it for him, which I did. And he said, I really like it, and I want you to produce it. And so that was my first production for A&M Records. I did 2 albums with them there on A&M Records. In the meantime, Seals and Crofts had sort of become Seals and Crofts. They were writing those tunes that they later became famous for. And they had actually recorded 2 albums as well, and I had played on one. I played bass on their second album, and by their third album, their manager came and asked if I would be interested in producing their next album, and that's when I got involved. And that's when we came up with the hits Summer Breeze and Diamond Girl and We May Never Pass This Way Again and Get Closer, Hummingbird. I think I did 12 albums with them over the course of the next 15 years. So it's quite a long run. I don't sing it.
Who wrote those songs? You just
Well, pretty much Jimmy Seals was the main writer, but he wrote everything. Seals and Crofts basically wrote all of their material. Later on, we did a couple of outside tunes. A friend of mine, Mike Cimbello, who still plays guitar for Stevie Wonder, kept sending me over tunes, and we did one or two of his tunes, and but other than that, they pretty much wrote all their songs. Yeah, because Jimmy's one of the best writers I've ever met.
did he write for other artists other than himself?
Well, he did. I mean, he started out as a writer in the early days for Four Star Publishing, back when he was with the Champs and all of that. So I don't know if he actually ever got any songs recorded by other people, but he was working on those chops as a writer. And the whole time we were together, he was writing songs and stuff. We would do his original songs in our band. But when he became a part of Seals and Crofts and they developed that concept, he started writing different. It was a real unique style of writing and songs that he came up with. That with the way Dash would put his harmonies with those songs and the instrumentation, Dash on the mandolin and Jimmy on the acoustic. They sort of developed a unique sound, and so his writing was primarily for Seals and Crofts at that point.
Really, I mean, the melodies and everything and the hook lines and those songs, but to your credit, the productions I think really were the strong point. Other than their harmonies, the lyrical content was kind of sketchy to me.
Yeah.
Except for when I think everybody could relate to "Summer Breeze Makes Me Feel Fine." But other than that, it's like a lot of pop songs are image driven or something like that.
Well, their first two albums were kind of folky. I mean, if you said, well, what category does that fit into? It's had a softness to it. And I had, remember been doing sessions all this time, and I decided to take them from A&M, which was more of a softer kind of recording facility, over to the Sound Factory where I'd worked on the Motown stuff with Dave Hassinger as engineer. I took them over there to record the Summer Breeze and Diamond Girl albums, and we got a bit more punch into the drums, and their songs took on a different feel and life. Plus, during my time as a session musician, I was used to different drummers and bass players and combinations of those. So depending on what the song called for, I knew exactly which drummer to call that would play that song the best. And we used, Jeff Beccaro, Hal Blaine, Jim Gordon, Jim Keltner, and Victor Feldman on percussion, who you inducted the other night in the Hall of Fame. There were some, great percussionists that we used. We used David Page on the piano for Diamond Girl. That was pre-Toto days. We used Wilton Felder, the famous bass player that worked on the Motown stuff, as well as being the sax player for the Jazz Crusaders. He played on Diamond Girl. I mean, there was just so many great musicians there that we were able to call upon, and just made it fantastic recording in LA at that time. When I first started doing the session work, Glenn had just phased out of session work, and he had his hit with By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And shortly after that, he got the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour. And I was fortunate enough to get called to work on that show for 2 years, and which was a lot of fun. The conductor was Marty Page, David Page's father. Marty also did the arrangements for the big Ray Charles country albums and those big hits that Ray Charles had back then, as well as a lot of other things. And there were great players in that band. Jeff Piccaro's dad was playing percussion, Joe Piccaro. We had Tom Scott on sax, and a lot of great horn players in the band. And also at that time I was doing the early Bill Cosby shows with Quincy Jones, and that was a lot of fun. And we were doing the Partridge Family. From the very first recording of the Partridge Family, I did all of their stuff. And then doing the Monkees stuff, so I was actually doing 4 TV shows at one time, along with all the record sessions in between, so it was a busy time.